Welcome to the Bookers Alliance podcast, where we hold the pencil and the pencil is power. Coming at you right now is your host, Marky Mark, along with the man, the myth, the legend, Frank Donaldson. Join us as we discuss the ever-changing landscape of professional wrestling. So hang on tight, you jabronis, and enjoy the ride. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining today's episode of the Bookers Alliance podcast. Come on inside the house. Bring yourself up a ringside seat. Get your soda, your popcorn, your whiskey barrel.
Hell no. Get your whiskey chaser. Holy shit.
Get everything whiskey related. Hey, we in Kentucky.
Yeah, it's getting live. We're live after 5 today.
We in Kentucky. We
going to official distilleries. We got our official sponsor this week. We got truly official. Wait till you guys find out who this sponsor is.
We got all kinds of things going on.
Yeah, hell yeah, and we're drowning over here. So keep your prayers out for it. Prayers and best wishes for Bookers Alliance this week, because our livers are gonna suffer.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, it's gonna be one this weekend.
All right, so today's title is WrestleMania Full Steam Ahead. But before we get to the conversation, let's throw a shout out to our sponsor. The sponsor this week, Bookers
Alliance?
No, just Bookers
Alliance. I'm so confused.
This is Bookers Whiskey. A lot of people don't know this is a product of Jim Beam and their beautiful whiskey that they have there. We are putting it down this week, though. This is barrel proof. 126.2.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, we told them we were official Bookers Alliance, and they said, "Well, we're Bookers Whiskey," and we said, "Damn, that's what a marriage that could be." And they said, "You know what? You guys fancy yourself to be wrestling fan? Let us send you some of our shit to wrestle with." And we said, "Okay, send it." Well, we're wrestling over here, but this might put us down for the count.
So not cut with anything. Definite.
A little bit of ice in mine, but that ice is melting quick.
So let's cheers, sir, and pray we make it out of this.
All right. Okay.
Whoo.
All righty.
Yeah, that's some good stuff.
Yep.
I like that, though.
Could have taken a half shot today, but
good taste to it, though.
Yeah, it's definitely got a good taste to it.
Good taste to it. Actually, I don't know. There's almost some citrus flavors in there.
Yeah. But I taste the wood.
Yeah.
When you say barrel proof, I'm like, yeah.
Barrel proof. It's straight from the barrel.
There's some wood in there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, WrestleMania Full Steam Ahead is our topic this week. We've talked a little bit about the Hall of Fame, but we wanted to give the Hall of Fame some love here that's going to take place on WrestleMania weekend. We've got to we've talked about AJ and we've talked about Stephanie, but
we need to talk about Stephanie again. Did you see that girl? Oh my God.
Always talk about Stephanie. Got to talk about Stephanie.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, Hunter. We got to talk about Stephanie.
Right. I mean, he ain't hired us in, so I mean, if we got to find our way in through the back door, then,
if this catches your ear, though, I mean, we ain't gonna be disrespectful.
Absolutely. I mean, I've heard Stephanie has had her eye on talent before out there and made some recommendations. So, hey, if it takes a little bit of pillow talk to get us in, get us a foot in the door, then I'll take that too.
So we already talking about Stephanie. So let's go ahead and kick off conversation there. So who is inducting Stephanie?
So
who is it? Who?
There's one obvious choice.
Yeah, there is an obvious choice.
Yeah, but that definitely can't happen.
No, I mean, it can't be Hunter.
No, I'm thinking her dad, right?
No,
I mean, he's the most obvious.
It can't be him either. I think I know who it'll be.
Who do you think?
I think it's Paul, not Paul Levesque.
You think Paul Heyman?
Paul Heyman.
No, I don't know about that one.
I think it's Paul
I'm actually thinking it'd be her mom, right? Because
after seeing Paul Heyman on Stephanie's podcast, there's a bond there.
I
think it's Paul. I think he'll
be they had a lot of love-hate in there. I don't necessarily.
And that's why I think it'll be him to induct her.
That wouldn't be a bad choice at all. It definitely can't be Triple H, right? Because that would be.
It's too on the nose.
But I feel like it should be Linda. I mean, because it can't be Vince, but who's gonna be able to speak on Stephanie's growth in the business better than Linda McMahon?
I think that would be cool. We've not seen Linda in a speaking role inside the WWE in a long time.
Not inside the WWE. Unfortunately, I see Linda speaking a lot on my other channels of TV, and I don't necessarily love any of it. I really wish she would go sit her ass down somewhere, but if we're talking in the world of wrestling, in the scope of wrestling, which I love, all world shit aside, then I think Linda would be the best. I don't necessarily know if we'll get her because it's Vegas, and I mean, she ain't gonna be the most popular person in Vegas right now just because of outside associations and affiliations. But if we're just looking at it through the wrestling scope, it should be her dad, but it can't. So I feel like her mom would be the next best option.
What about Shane? You think it'd be Shane?
Shit, I mean, isn't he on the outs just like the old man?
He's on the outs too.
So he wouldn't be a bad option either. But I feel like between him and Hunter and Stephanie and Trip and Dad, I feel like there's been such a back and forth, a push and pull between those family members. I feel like Linda's the only one that Stephanie can say, hey, out of the four of us, she would be the closest to. Because I mean, obviously her and her dad, God only knows what's going on between them two since the whole TKO thing and all that happened. And honestly, I mean, I feel like there was a point in time where it seemed like Shane thought he was that heir apparent, and Stephanie kind of took that helm from him.
True.
And I don't necessarily know where they got back from that, because you don't see a lot of them on camera together.
You don't.
When you do, they're in adversarial roles. They're never like on the same side. They're never on the same team, so to speak. So I don't know. And if we know, if anything, Vince is going to pull out any real tension, he's going to put it on camera because it's going to sell. So I feel like he exploited the tension that was already there, and we just kind of got to see it play out in person.
Can you do me a favor, though?
What's that?
Can you please not reference Vince and the words pull out again?
Well, I mean, apparently that ain't his thing. So somebody should be telling him that. That might have kept him out of some trouble.
Let's avoid that topic at all costs, please, sir.
Only for a while. I think next year at WrestleMania's Hall of Fame, we'll be having a lot of that conversation.
It might.
If it stays in Saudi, but even that's up in the air right now.
Seriously.
So.
The only other person outside of the family and Paul Heyman that I could think of that might induct Stephanie there, maybe the Undertaker, maybe.
I could see that. Has he ever inducted anybody?
No.
So that might be original enough.
I don't even think he did Kane.
No, I don't think so.
Because Kane was during the pandemic, right?
Yeah. I don't even. Right. I was going to say I don't think anybody did Kane, to be honest. But yeah, that could be. So Undertaker could be really good. If there was somebody like so, and we've been talking about this all year, so it's not going to be that far of a reach for our readers. But if Chris Jericho was to debut at the Hall of Fame and induct Stephanie, win-win right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I mean, because if he goes up there and calls her what he used to call her back in the day, give me a break. I would be down for that. That would bring a lot of energy to the room. That would bring so much excitement. It would get a lot of eyes on the product because, I mean, let's be honest. Here on the East Coast, we ain't watching that shit.
No.
It's starting at midnight. We ain't watching that shit. I will not see any of it live.
I'll catch up the next morning.
Yeah, I'll see it Sunday. I'll see it Saturday morning. I promise I won't see any of it live. I'll make a point to go to sleep before then just to wake up early enough to watch it. But if they were to debut him or re-debut him as a surprise, that would be awesome in and of itself. If he was the one to induct Stephanie, I mean, that would just be a win-win.
I think the speech will be nice. I think she'll have a lot of insightful things to say.
Yeah.
Listening to her on her podcast, even though the podcast is supposed to be about the guest, she always finds some point to connect with the guest and turn it to an internal conversation.
Of course, McMahon can find a way to be the focal point of any interview, no matter what.
But I do believe there'll be some things that she's able to kind of say up there that'll connect with a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on, AJ Styles.
Fresh out of retirement.
First ballot Hall of Famer, apparently. I mean, it's just...
hell, first week Hall of Famer. He was retired for a night when they told him you're in. I've heard a lot of scuttlebutt on that, though. Apparently, there was a lot of thought that AJ was going to retire and wander his way down to AEW. And apparently there's been talk that this may have been like a backdoor ploy to keep him around for a little while.
Hey, this is professional wrestling.
Hey, anything could happen.
Anything can happen. So you never know. But
I know if I'm AJ, if I'm looking at the WWE Hall of Famer going down to damn AEW to wrestle Leo Rush, I'm probably hanging around to get my Hall of Fame ring first.
I do know, I watched the Talking Shop podcast when he was on there with the Good Brothers. I heard everything he had to say. It was legitimately a surprise. He didn't know that it was coming.
Yeah.
You could tell that, that he was genuinely surprised and happy the fact that, that kind of happened. I also listened to it, and this is another conversation that we might get into later on in the podcast. But what AJ had to say in that podcast, as a dad, it connected with me. And I could tell, the AEW thing may or may not have been real, but that man was ready to go home and spend time with his family.
He
was ready to play dad.
He's been legitimately on the road for 25 years at this point. He's been nonstop since basically the birth of TNA, the death of WCW. He's been actively working, trying to provide for his family. And let's be honest, he didn't start making that money, real money, until he got to WWE. So he basically to put a toll on his body for 15 years just to get the opportunity to get to WWE.
Yep.
So God bless him for making all the money he could. He's able to provide for his family for a generation and a half now, at least minimum. All kudos to it, but I get it. After a while, you're like, you know what? We're set. How much more do you really need? At some point, all of us have to stop and realize, how much more do you really need, right? You got to know when it's time to walk away. You just got to.
So in reference to John Cena walking away, this whole last year that we saw Cena, everybody kept saying, I don't know why he's walking away. He still can go. And yes, that man can still go. But at what point was his volume really turned up to 11? And then what was it like behind the curtain after it was all said and done?
Yeah.
Because you watch that man walk around now, that man's hinged over his hips.
Yeah.
He can't walk straight.
No, yeah.
And then you realize, damn, he really did give us everything he had in that last year to make it look like he ain't missed a step.
No, absolutely. But I've been thinking about this too, as I'm seeing people getting inducted. There's conversation now about Brock Lesnar probably retire or possibly retiring. AJ just retired. A lot of people in their 40s, and that's not common. It used to be, hell, you were wrestling into your 60s, God forbid your 70s every now and again. But Terry Funk, Terry Funk died in the ring.
He did.
3 times.
Flair died in the ring.
Absolutely.
He had a heart attack.
One time. But Terry Funk legitimately died in the ring 3 times, and he still found a way out and died, peacefully in a bit. But I still, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, why do these guys want to walk away? Why are they trying to go out when, like you said, they could still go? And I think a lot of it ties into who's inducting all these people or who's announcing all these people now. Undertaker.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of guys look at like the documentaries The Undertaker's done, The Last Ride, things like that. And I think they heard Undertaker saying, I should have left at this point, but I didn't. And now I'm trying to get to that point. And I'm never as good as I can get. And let's be honest, Undertaker never was happy with the matches that he was supposed to retire with. He wasn't happy with Roman. He wasn't happy with Bray Wyatt. He wasn't happy with AJ. Hell, he wasn't happy with the tag match they had over in Saudi with DX. Everything he did kind of after that streak broke, he wasn't happy with, which means when that streak got broke, that's probably when he should have walked away at 30.
It just means it's hard for me to speak on this and not have feelings because Undertaker was one of my guys.
Yeah.
I will go to my grave still thinking Undertaker's streak never should have been broken. He should have retired undefeated at WrestleMania. Me and there's a lot of death in this part that I'm talking about, but me and a friend of mine that's passed on and gone resting. So we always thought that Undertaker's last match should have been at Mania, undefeated, and then the Druids would have came and just taking him away. And we never would have.
Should he been defeated if he was going to? If he had to be carried out as a dead corpse, shouldn't he lose?
He was already dead. He was the Undertaker.
But he can't pin somebody and then get up and do the whole underneath thing with the tongue out and then just crumple over. No. So anybody who's been watching long enough knows it's time-honored tradition. You got to go out on your sword.
You got to go out on your back.
You got to put the next guy over. So at least when Undertaker lost or ended, he didn't have to lose because AJ was already established and he did his job when he put Roman over. That was who he should have put over.
Plus, AJ begged him out for that last match.
Yeah, I mean, and AJ didn't need the win. At that point, AJ was a multi-time world champion. AJ was already a Hall of Famer, and
that wasn't a traditional match.
No, absolutely.
It was a match.
That was a mess.
I'm on the other side of that coin. I enjoyed it.
So, looking back at it, yeah, but considering the surrounding events going on and the hodgepodge, they had to throw it together in about 3 days' notice. That was a mess. Let's be honest. For what I'm sure they had planned to go on, and the fact that he was working with AJ, he didn't need AJ to do a cinematic match. He wanted AJ to have a good in-ring match to go out and look the right way, and unfortunately, he just wasn't able to get there.
To me, though, as the mystique of The Undertaker, as the cinematic as his character was, to me, it fit. I don't know. I just see it that way.
Idea fit. But
it fit because not only that, like him going out with the Undertaker logo and lasers on that barn, the flames, him on the bike with Metallica playing him out as he rode away. I mean, to me, that was American Badass and the Taker of Souls, like all in one. It was to me, it wasn't the perfect ending, but it was good enough for me as a fan going, the only thing that I wish was what everybody wishes for The Undertaker. Nobody got that Sting Undertaker match.
No, that would have been...
That's the only thing as an Undertaker fan that I ever missed.
That would have been amazing, but unfortunately, when they were able to do it, when Sting came in at like 2015 or whatever it was, I feel like that just would have been another one of the Undertaker horrible matches. That I feel like
Taker wasn't in good health then.
And neither was Sting. I mean, hell, obviously Sting came in and he lasted less than a year and he was on the outs. I feel like that would have been in that area like Goldberg Undertaker. I feel like it would have swam in that same realm of that. And I feel like we actually would have been cheated had we waited that long and finally got that match and then it turned out that way.
Taker Sting should have happened in the early 2000s.
No, we needed that when WCW died. So and apparently there were a lot of talks around that about trying to bring Sting in back then when his AOL contract ran out. Apparently there was a lot of conversation before he went to TNA about bringing him in for the Undertaker match, which that would have been like 2003. That would have been great, right? That would have been right in that beautiful window of time because that was 20 years before.
Yep.
We would have got both their guys in their prime. They would have been mid-30s. They were both fresh. They were both athletic. That would have been amazing. Once that window passed, and and people still wanted it, and they said Vince just kiboshed it. And on that one, I feel like Vince was right. Yeah, looking at the two of those guys and with the work rate that they had there, putting either one of them in with another old guy would have turned into Goldberg. Undertaker.
So let's stop for a minute. I know we're so far off conversation, but let's talk about this for a minute. We're booking Sting, Taker, both in their prime. Let's look at it from a booker's standpoint right now. Both in their prime.
Yeah.
Sting and Taker.
Yeah.
Loyalty out the window. Company loyalty out the window.
Yeah.
Who do you put over in this match? Who wins?
So it was going to be at WrestleMania. Vince was booking it. Undertaker was winning, hands down. There was zero chance.
But let's just say the match didn't happen at Mania. It just happened. Like
still zero chance. I mean,
so you say, but like even if it didn't happen in WWE,
if it happened in WCW,
no, let's just say it happened. It was a non-promotional match. No WWE, no WCW. You've got the biggest iconic character from WCW in Sting. And then the Phenom in The Undertaker from WWE. As a booker, if you were booking an indie show with these two dudes and they're not affiliated, who do you put over?
So unfortunately, I can't get my mind. I'm gonna have to leave. I'm gonna have to defer and leave that to you. I can't.
But I'm the
get
same.
my mind around taking Sting, taking the WCW out of Sting, and taking the WWE out of Undertaker.
See, I can wrap my head around that. The problem that I have is knowing the mystique that both of these characters have. How do you book somebody over the other in that match?
Well, so that's the thing. So what you're proposing?
That may have been why it never happened.
Well, yeah, but no. So WWE definitely could have handled it because they wouldn't. I mean, they didn't have no problem putting Triple H over Sting. So they put Seth Rollins over Sting. So
Triple H.
That's what I'm saying. In WWE, I know exactly how it would have happened, especially if it happened in WrestleMania. But no, so essentially we're way off topic here. So we got to keep an eye on time. So producers, time. But what essentially you're promoting here is Mark Calloway versus Steve Borden.
Right.
I don't know how the hell to book that. I mean, probably Undertaker. At that point, if it comes down to a physical fight and those two guys met in some alley, I'd probably pick Undertaker because Sting ain't no street fighter, right? No. So, if you're looking at it that way, then yeah. But I mean, if you're looking at, NWA champ Sting when they were both in WCW, Undertaker had no chance because he was Mean Mark Callis. He was dead in the water. Or if you're talking Sting when he got to WWE after the WCW buyout, I was Undertaker all the way. There really is no way to say who you could book in
it's
man-on-man fight.
I think it's one of those scenarios where they fight each other 1,511 times.
Yeah, it could have turned out.
And you just flip-flop the winner back and forth.
Yeah.
It's just how it is. All right, let's get back on topic. Let's talk about some other inductions that are happening for this year's
I'm ready to talk about Demolition.
Let's talk about Demolition.
I want to talk about, here comes the axe. Here comes the smasher. So I've been waiting for Demolition to go in the Hall of Fame for
a lot of
millennia at this point. I mean, they left WWE in the 90s, so I've essentially been waiting for them to go in for 25 years minimum at this point. So thank goodness somebody finally woke up and took their heads out of their asses and got Demolition in there, but okay.
Yep. So I'll be honest with you. Never was the biggest Demolition fan.
Well, you weren't a WWF guy.
I wasn't a WWF guy, but I also looked at them as, Road Warrior knockoffs.
Yeah, that's not what they were.
That's not what they were. And see, I can't get past the stigma to not see that because that's just how I looked at them. And then, even if you don't draw that comparison, you're like, when did Kiss start wrestling? It's like I don't understand.
Kiss was in WWF. That was with the Demon there, but
with the
Demolition they were neither one. They weren't Kiss and they weren't the Road Warriors. They weren't. I mean, I get it. Obviously, they're a tag team with face paint. That's where the whole comparison ends.
Yeah.
In the real world, that's the only comparison. So I mean, if you really want to talk about a Road Warriors knockoff, that's the Powers of Pain. That's the Warlord and the Barbarian.
Yeah,
they were Road Warriors.
Well, because they were also body guys.
They were body guys, and they were. Neither one of them had history in the business prior to the tag team. Axe and Smash were consummate veterans before they even got together. Again, the only comparison between the two is they had face paint. That's it.
Yeah.
They were a tag team with face paint. That's it.
I remember my memories of Demolition is against the Hart Foundation.
Yeah.
And against the Rockers.
Yeah.
That's where those are the two tag teams.
Put good work in with them. They had the Brain Busters. They wrestled at WrestleMania 6 against Haku and Andre the Giant, and they beat Haku and Andre at WrestleMania 6. So I
remember that, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they were a headline tag team the entire time they were around because they were different, right?
Right.
They were in WWE world, everything was a cartoon character. Well, these two guys, I mean, yeah, they had the face paint, but I mean, they would come down there and they would literally demolish you. They would, one guy would cut you down by axing you and the other guy would smash you. And back then, their finisher was where Smash would do a backbreaker and press the guy on his knee, and then Axe would come off the middle rope with an elbow drop. That in the 80s, that was creative as hell. That was brand new for a WWF audience because we didn't have the Road Warriors flipping guys off their shoulders in WWF. We had the Hart Foundation doing the Heart Attack, and that was pretty much it. Nobody else was doing combo tag team moves. The Killer Bees had drop kicks and stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff we were getting. So when we saw Demolition, I mean, they were groundbreaking for a WWF audience, especially one that wasn't NWA centric.
Right. I think it's a good call to have them in the Hall of Fame while they're both still alive.
Yeah. So I definitely appreciate that.
I hate to say it that way, but to be honest, I'm tired of seeing some of these favorite guys go in and they're already gone.
Well, in a minute, we're about to talk about one.
Yeah, unfortunately. But, kudos to them finally, whatever made the decision, and we probably all know what the decision, why it was made, but kudos to them for finally putting Demolition in where they belong in the Hall of Fame.
Let's
talk about one that has already passed on, though. This is Psycho Sid Vicious.
Psycho Sid Justice.
Sid Justice. If anybody was a blueprint for a sizable big man that wasn't a giant, Sid was a blueprint.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of the guys now, JBL and a lot of announcers say if you could build a pro wrestler from the ground up, it'd be Randy Orton, right?
Yeah.
Well, the predecessor to that in the 90s, when people said if you could build a wrestler from the ground up, it was Sid. I mean, Sid came in WWF in WCW where he debuted first. He was the first guy to come in and start doing a power bomb.
Yep.
And I mean, up till that point, you'd never seen anybody do a power bomb. You may have seen a small guy do one, but they didn't have a name for it or anything like that. It was just a flippy stuff.
Yep.
But when Sid came in standing 6'9", and he was power bombing guys, he looked like he was destroying guys. I mean, we hadn't seen wrestling like that. Up to that point, you saw a body slam and you thought, oh my God, he just killed that guy. Well, this guy, I mean, Sid was flipping you up and he was powering you down. He was the first guy to start doing the choke slam.
Sid was the prototype for a lot of wrestlers that came after him. The one that I always compared to Sid that, he was bald, but I always compared Goldberg to Sid.
Yeah.
They had the exact, Sid was taller, but they had the exact same body type.
Yeah, same body type, same athleticism. They could both move. I mean, and hell, Sid was a multi-time world champion. So, I mean, he got to a point where he was understood how to be used. Early in his career, I don't think they really knew how to use him. They wanted to pit him against like Sting, obviously. They were trying, WCW was trying to follow the WWF model. You got to put your big monster against your baby face. And those Sting and Sid, they didn't have the best of chemistry in their first go-round, in the 90s. They were both pretty green. I mean, neither one of them were veterans by that point, and neither one of them really had ring psychology. So, I mean, you just kind of had two guys out there doing a lot of punching, a lot of kicking, and a lot of power moves. Well, when Sid left and went to WWF, it was, he had to open up into a new thing. That, of course, WWF being the same, under the same model, they're like, well, we got to pit him up against Hogan. And that was a nightmare, right?
Yeah,
you looked at it like, ooh,
that not good.
That ain't a good decision. We may have missed the boat there, but then they moved him into like Macho Man, and they moved him into your mid-card guys.
Wasn't that around about the time they put him with the Heenan family?
Sid was never with the Heenan family.
I thought it was with the Heenan family.
God, no.
Who was his? That was somebody.
Harvey Whippleman was Sid's
Harvey
manager.
Whippleman.
Yeah.
There we go.
Downtown Bruno himself.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, but no, so Sid needed a mouthpiece, right?
He did need a mouthpiece.
So thank God WWF understood it, because WCW didn't, and they let Sid just go out there and ramble, and hell, Sid was promo-wise in the Ultimate Warrior territory.
He was.
They kind of swam in that same wild, which is wild because those two promo with each other occasionally. And I mean, if I'm in that room trying to film that, I'm like, oh, God, let's just get through this.
You want to laugh? Go look at one of those promos.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm like, let's just get through this. Hey, we don't care what you say. Let's just get through it.
Unfortunately, Sid will also be remembered, though, for one of the most gruesome injuries that happened in the ring.
Yeah, on Sid. So Sid's last big time show, yeah.
It was. He snapped that leg, and that leg was just dangling. I mean, we've seen injuries like that on the football field, but I don't think I'd ever seen one like that in the wrestling.
No, not one that bad. I mean, we've seen some nasty ones, but I mean, Sid was just stuck there because when you're in the ring, I mean, you're the highlight. On a football field, you can pan away. You can go look to somebody else. In the ring, there ain't nowhere else to look.
Nah.
When you see somebody's ankle turned upside down and their legs just dangling there like a twig ready to snap at any moment, that's gross.
And it wasn't like, it was in a move when it happened.
Yeah, well, he was coming off the rope.
He was coming off the rope.
Never a middle rope guy anyway, but for whatever reason or another, Sid decided to come off the middle rope, and it didn't turn out any better than what we're making it sound like.
Nope.
It's gross.
So one of the last people
I need a drink thinking about that. Whew.
One of the last people that's been announced getting inducted to the Hall of Fame this year is the Worm, Dennis Rodman.
All right. Shout out from the Chicago Bulls to Dennis Rodman, recently inducted into the NBA Naismith Hall of Fame, soon to be inducted into the McMahon WWF Hall of Fame.
Who inducts Dennis Rodman?
Yeah, that's a long conversation there. So
Dennis Rodman.
Eric Bischoff?
You know who I hope it is?
Who's that?
I kind of low-key hope it's Carmelo Hayes.
Stop. There's no connective tissue to that. Right?
No, there is no connective tissue.
Zero. No. So in all honesty, at this point,
the one that should induct him is not around.
Well, yeah, it would be Hulk Hogan. I mean,
I get your Bischoff.
So there's two options. Bischoff, because he was the closest to Hogan. Kevin he was Nash. The one that hired him in. I don't know about Kevin at DDP, right?
DDP,
so Dennis Rodman's main match that everybody remembers was Hogan and Rodman versus Karl Malone and DDP.
Maybe they can get Karl Malone to show up.
They might be able to get him to show up. He definitely shouldn't induct him, because I've heard Karl Malone publicly speak, and that is going to be like a Mr. T thing if we let that happen. But we definitely don't need Karl and Dennis trying to give two speeches.
But I must say, if anybody shows up to the Hall of Fame for Dennis Rodman, Lord, sweet baby Jesus laying in that manger, please let it be Carmen Electra.
No, and so those two, so there's no connective tissue there, thank God.
No, but damn, Carmen Electra's still fine as hell.
Yeah, she definitely is. I mean, she did The Last Dance where she talked about her time with Dennis and all. I remember the whole while watching it thinking, how the hell did you end up with Dennis Rodman? But you got to flash back to the 90s, right? But so that's the thing. You got to flash back to the 90s.
The 90s was wild.
The 90s was a time to be alive. And I mean, I was alive, but I was young. I was a fresh 21 years old when Dennis and Carmen Electra were doing their thing. And I didn't really understand the party lifestyle like that. I had a taste of it in college, but I didn't have $10 million behind me powering my party.
Right.
When you look back at that and realize the kind of money that Dennis was making, but B, willing to spend on a good time.
Yeah.
You start realizing why Madonna and Carmen Electra and all these other superstar celebrities are hanging around with the Worm.
True.
Plus, when your name's the Worm, I mean, there's a reason.
There's a reason. So the question is, A, will he have his hair dyed?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
B, will he be in men's or women's clothes?
Probably men's now. So I haven't seen Dennis in women's clothes in a few years.
And C, will Kim Jong-un be around?
So this year, maybe. Next year, probably. So if they had waited for Dennis till next year, probably. That probably would have been who inducted him. But
I'm giving it a whole lot of crap. But to be honest with you, Dennis Rodman owned the scene in WCW back in the NWO days. That was amazing within itself.
So again, that was a tie. I mean, so what Mike Tyson did for WWF, what got them back in the swing of after having lost, umpteen weeks in a row, a lot of that losing was happening because Dennis Rodman was on WCW TV.
Yep.
I mean, he was at the current time wrestling for WCW. He was a world champion on the Chicago Bulls, probably one of the best dynasties in the NBA. And this was at the NBA's heyday. I mean, basketball didn't get any bigger than what it was in the late 90s. And Dennis Rodman was standing shoulder to shoulder to Michael Jordan at that point in time.
Yep.
So not only was Dennis a pop star, not only was he, a celebrity outside the NBA, but in the NBA, I mean, when you're standing shoulder to shoulder with Michael Jordan, you don't get no bigger. There was no bigger superstar in basketball in the 90s. Hell, let's call a spade a spade. There was no bigger superstar on the planet than Michael Jordan in the late 90s.
Yep.
And Dennis Rodman was there for the whole ride in that second run from 96 to 98. So, I mean, Rodman was being seen everywhere. In every TV channel you turned on for, 9 months of the NBA season, you saw Dennis Rodman because you were looking at him next to Michael Jordan. WCW getting him, that was a huge get.
Let's talk about something that they introduced last year at the Hall of Fame, though, that we've not heard mention of this year.
What, midnight start time? Thanks, guys.
No. So last year they started something where they called it their induction of the WrestleMania moment.
Okay.
Where last year the WrestleMania moment was the match that happened between Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
So if they're going to do that this year, they've not mentioned it, but I don't think it was widely publicized anyway beforehand.
No, that was like a last minute deal. They
thing.
Popped up with, but I think a lot of it was a good way to get Stone Cold and Bret to show up. I think they just wanted some TV ratings. So.
But let's say they keep it. Let's say they keep it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if we're going to induct a WrestleMania moment this year, what is your Mania moment that you would induct?
What they should have inducted last year for the inaugural one, Hogan and Andre. WrestleMania 3.
Correct.
Anything else? And again, Hogan and Andre couldn't be there last year to do it. So I get why they went with two guys they had physically there. But let's be honest, there's no bigger WrestleMania moment. I don't care until we get to WrestleMania 103. There's not going to be a bigger WrestleMania moment than Hogan and Andre at WrestleMania 3. Because before that, not a lot of people were worried about WrestleMania. Hell, Vince thought WrestleMania 1 was going to be the end of the business. He thought he was going to tank everything out of WrestleMania 1. And he was lucky enough to get into WrestleMania 2, where he had a debacle where he tried to do 3 different locations. And apparently that was the most expensive thing that had been done in wrestling to that point, and it was kind of considered a flop.
Yeah.
So going into that, I mean, there was no promise that WrestleMania 3 was going to reinvigorate the business. I mean, there was a chance that could have been the final nail in the coffin. But because of Hogan and Andre and a lot of other great matches that happened before that match, but Hogan and Andre was the reason people saw that other stuff. Because of that is why we're having WrestleMania 42 now, and why we're having WrestleMania in Saudi and WrestleMania in Vegas. All of that's because of WrestleMania 3.
There's 2 other options that I would even entertain. If Hogan Andre is not on the table, let's just say it's not on the table. Okay. I'm in agreement with you, though. If it is on the table, it's Hogan Andre.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take Hogan Andre off the table.
Okay.
There's 2 other matches in my mind that should be next because they had a profound moment in WrestleMania history.
Okay.
One of them is from that same card, WrestleMania 3.
Yeah.
Savage Steamboat.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, that match was years ahead of its time.
Yeah, that match still holds up today.
It does. And I've gone back and I've watched it several times.
No, that match holds up today. If I was watching that live today, I would think it was current wrestling. I would be like, damn, who these 2 young guys out here getting busy. But
the first time that I've ever seen somebody, quote unquote, steal the show, it's that match.
Yeah.
That match was incredible.
Yeah.
Now you'll hear some old timers and some other people say, "Well, yeah, it'd have been a great match too if you'd have had 7 weeks to blah 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 and rehearse it and all that stuff."
Well, everybody's got that. We all
just hate. Just go ahead and hate on it. I mean, it's okay. But
back in those days, that was called house shows.
That was called house shows.
We all had 7 weeks to prepare for it.
The only other match, if you wanted the 2 people alive, and Hogan Andre is not on the table, you want the 2 people alive. Brock Taker.
So
because to me, we've talked about it already. Brock Taker at Mania was a shock to everyone's system. Nobody called that. Nobody.
I don't know.
We all knew that it would eventually could happen, but why Brock? In that moment, after the fact, all the stories that's come out from Brock and Taker and everything else that's been said about it, I get it. It makes sense. I get it. But in that moment, would you have gone to Vegas, taken $1 million and put it down on Brock Lesnar in that moment?
In that moment, if I had $1 million, I absolutely would have.
Really?
Simply because it was Brock Lesnar. You got to remember that was fresh when Brock Lesnar had come back, right? Brock had only come back in 2012. And hell, Brock had lost up to that point, except one match, and that was to damn Triple H with sledgehammers and a whole bunch of other nonsense in there, and the son-in-law, obviously, card having been played. But no, it just at that point, the reason I say that is because I could see then in 2014, Undertaker was slowing down, right? And I actually thought after he lost that match, he was done. I thought he would call it. I thought he was going to quit.
He probably should have.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially considering he left with a concussion and the way he ended up looking, and then seeing the backstage stuff, Unreal before it was Unreal and all that. Seeing he had to be taken straight to the emergency room, and I mean, Vince left Mania to go sit with him.
Yep.
It seems like Undertaker was in a really, really bad way after that match. And understanding all of that and the reality behind it, then and besides, if there's anybody ever in wrestling that could beat Undertaker legitimately, it was Brock, right? Yep. I mean, and the fact that I knew that they had already started planting the seeds for that way back when Brock was physically in the UFC. Problem is Brock lost in the UFC, and then they still tried to do the little angle, but it was kind of funky because Brock was coming off an L, and we were expecting him to be coming off a W. So
the one thing that I will always remember from that build up to that match is Paul Heyman going, Brock will be the one. 21-1.
Well, that was kind of the point where people started saying, "Hey, what Paul says on these these interviews, it ain't necessarily a promise. It's a spoiler.
That's what I was about to say. Is that where he started it?
That's not where he started it, but he started it after that. After that happened, that's when he started saying, what I'm telling you isn't a promise. It's a spoiler. And I'm like, it kind of was a spoiler, because he don't really go out there and tell you a lot of lies when he's selling these matches.
And ever since then, there's only been maybe one. Maybe there hasn't been. Anytime he says that line, he's feeding you the truth.
Yeah, pretty much.
And people just don't believe it.
The times Brock lost against like Cody and Roman, Cody, he wasn't around for the Cody thing. And then with Roman, I don't even know if you remember this, but remember he was hyping up Roman and the Samoan dynasty and all. He was hyping them up in the program with Brock Lesnar so much that when Roman came back from pandemic with Paul by his side, it was almost understood because Paul had hyped him up so much.
You knew the
Paul
connection
made
already.
him the superstar that he needed to be to get to that next level, to be on a Brock Lesnar level.
Yep.
Paul was making him that while Brock was beating Roman's ass. Paul was making him that next character, and it just took that extra little oomph of the pandemic and then the whole tribal chief thing to get him there. But Paul had been working that behind the scenes for at least 3 years prior to that pandemic mania.
Yep. So we've kind of talked about everything within the Hall of Fame that obviously there's always some posthumous inductions that they do, which is cool and everything. I hate the fact that sometimes, and this is also with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Sometimes it just feels like some of these guys, if they're still on Earth, put them in while they're here.
You would think, but
so
there's a lot of nonsense going on behind the scenes, and people, especially when Vince was around, there was a lot of lawsuits and stuff like that. I mean, hell, that's what kept Demolition out for the last 20 years at least. They had a lawsuit going against WWE, and they never would settle the lawsuit. Nobody could come to terms on licensing. I mean, Demolition said, hey, we want to get paid for all our shit being on your DVDs and your network and all that. And Vince said, you signed a contract that said you wouldn't get paid for that. What the hell? So I get it, right? When you're an older wrestler and you're like, hey, I didn't take care of my money as good as I needed to for the first 40 years of my life, at some point you're going to start looking like, hey, I need something on this back end here. But it is what it is.
As we wrap it up here, I hear the distillers calling our name. Sounds like we're getting ready to go
next?
into the rig house. We're
All
next.
right.
So, pray for you boys. Pray that we make it out of this trip.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting
It's going to be an interesting one. So
send food.
Send food.
Yeah,
lots of food.
Greasy food, please.
As we drop out of this program, thank you for listening to our show today. Drop a line on our social media platforms. Let us know your thoughts. And with that, everybody, we bid you adieu.
Peace. Yeah, bartender, pour me another.
Today's podcast was produced by SBP. You can find our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Also, connect with us on our social media accounts. Search for The Bookers Alliance on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X.